Come back home to Africa. She's calling your name through the wind. Come back home to Africa. The fatted calf and golden ring are waiting for you once again. Greetings, greetings, welcome. Come on in. Come on in, come on in. Greetings, welcome, greetings. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Alafia, Alafia. Welcome, greetings, greetings. Greetings, come on in, welcome. Have a seat. Welcome, welcome. Out of bondage and now I am free. Da 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 da. Da da da. Welcome, come on in, welcome, come on in. Greetings, greetings. Peace and love, joy and prosperity. Asheo, greetings, greetings. Let me know what the sound quality is like. Greetings, Kiona. Thy Marcus Art. Greetings, greetings and salutations. Greetings, welcome. Come on in, come on in. Yes. Welcome, welcome, greetings. Thank you. Greetings, greetings. Yes. Welcome, greetings and salutations. Thank you, thank you. Come back home to Africa. Come back home. Da 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 da. Da 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 da. Da da da. Da 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 da. Da 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 da. Good. Greetings, greetings, greetings. Greetings and salutations. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I certainly do appreciate you being present for another edition of Revolutionary Hoodoo, New Orleans Voodoo Secrets and Recipes. Divine all peace and love, joy and prosperity, manifestation and revelation. You are now here, sitting live with the Divine Prince, Pan-African spiritualist, practitioner, author, and advisor, Elagoon Oloye, Hoodoo Obeah Bokur, sharing with you in all things spiritual, mystical, metaphysical, cosmic, evolutionary, revolutionary, healing, and holistic from a Pan-African hoodoo, world spiritualist perspective. Understanding that all is indeed a blessing if you can just see beyond the veils, for it is all just an illusion and a test and one of the greatest divine mysteries of this life cycle. This is my constant and personal affirmation, reverberation, reiteration, and it is my personal ever living reality. It's crucial to the very foundation of my inner standing, my inner being, my walk, my works along this divine, all blessed life path and journey. It is how I, the Divine Prince, make sense out of all that we're challenged with here in our daily existence on Mother Father Earth. And it is my personal place of power and inner standing, the place from where I begin, the place from where I realize and crystallize all my endeavors, understanding that I and I alone create and co-create my divine destiny, and I alone create and co-create my divine, all blessed reality. And so it is. Ashe. Today is Monday, March 30th, 2020, and I am emanating and vibrating with you and for you live, virtually, verbally, cosmically, quantum universally from this working temple of the House of the Divine Prince. Thai Potions, Hoodoo Central LLC in this legendary, beautiful, and most enchanted city in America, New Orleans, Louisiana, the land of my ancestors and those who came before me along this hoodoo, voodoo, obeah, bokur, spiritualist life path and journey. I am here to share with you that which was shared with me, the power that manifests with me in the herbs, the roots, the plants, the rituals, the spells, the knowledge. For indeed, this is not just conversation, this is not just philosophy, this is not just religion. This is a way of being, this is a way of understanding, this is indeed a lifestyle, and this is indeed result oriented practice. Spiritual power and knowledge lies in its efficacy and its ability to produce lasting, long term, reliable, tangible results right now, right here, in this present moment in time space. All else is foolishness, all else is vanity, all else is ego, all else is just conversation. So let's move into the work. Let's move into the homework. I acknowledge each and every one of you individually and collectively. Let me look at my chat and see what's going on. Greetings, Kiona. Thank you so much for being our chat monitor and being present. I am using a new mechanism today, a new technology. I have my cell phone in a glass. So I just wanted to be sure that the glass is not affecting the sound quality anyway. Is it making it worse? Is it making it better? But if it's indeed working, that works for me. I can see through the glass. Everything works out. I just can't play around with the phone or the chat. So there's still that chat delay in terms of what's on my desktop versus what we're streaming live on the mobile device. So I need you to continue to type your questions, comments, requests in all capital letters so that Kiona can see them. She'll help me by putting a red question mark beneath them, and then I'll be able to respond directly and most appropriately and most immediately to your questions and comments. Greetings, Marcus. Greetings, Kayla, Empress KK, and of course, Seven the Gentleman. Thank you so much, Hoodoo Occultism, for always being present, for always supporting, for being a part of this squared circle of gods and goddesses in this here sacred space. I think it's important to note how the times, the season, what we're living and existing and adapting to right now is beginning to affect our spiritual qualities, our mental qualities, our emotional qualities. And so we are now beginning to see with our third eye how we can, and in some cases, how we must create sacred space, sometimes beyond ourselves, sometimes beyond our four walls. And so we need not share a temple. We need not share a house. We need not share a physical space in order to create sacred space here that we can operate in, that we can communicate in, that we can commune in, that we can share in, and indeed that we can grow in. So I am grateful and humbled and appreciative of those who show up here at high noon U.S. Central Standard Time to be a part of the Power Lunch, the real Power Lunch, revolutionary hoodoo, New Orleans voodoo secrets and recipes. I wish to discuss voodoo. I wish to discuss hoodoo, obia, root work, conjure, spirituality, and religion. Absolutely, I will respond to all questions and comments. But I hope to, my desire for, my vocation for, what I get up for in the morning is voodoo. Is voodoo. And every day is an opportunity to acknowledge your ancestors, every day. So today, like any day, I get up, I acknowledge my ancestors, I acknowledge Egungun, I acknowledge Eguns, I acknowledge Gelede, I acknowledge the ancestral lineages of my family, of my tree branches, if you will. And we do so every day. We know they have their ritual day, but we do so every day. But today we acknowledge the powers of protection. Today we acknowledge the powers of defense. Today we acknowledge the powers that hold up our foundation upon which you stand. And foundations are being tested right now. I'm going to talk about that a little bit more in a minute, in a moment. Today we acknowledge the powers of direction. Having a direction, understanding direction, following direction, hearing direction, interpreting direction, sometimes seeing direction. And of course, today we acknowledge the powers of fertility, fruitfulness, growth. This is a time of planting. This is a time of planting. This is a time of sowing. This is a time of weeding and weeding out. This is a time of cleansing and purification. This is a time of being still. I learned to continue. I learned to move it forward. So I apologize if you were on my Blog Talk Radio line at area code 845-277-9143. Then your stream of communication never stopped. But if you're a part of my live YouTube live audience, you know there's always a test. There's always an illusion that I have to sort of move through. And it helps, I see, to get you to get on the phone line. So don't run. Area code 310. I sent you. Don't run. Please don't run. If you were on the phone line, then you didn't miss a beat. I didn't miss a beat. My conversation continued and you didn't miss it. YouTube sometimes is not always that consistent. And so you missed a beat there. And so I'm just going to move forward and allow you to go back in the archive and hear what I said. Thank you so much, Kiona, for being present for me. I appreciate you. All this is truly and indeed a blessing. What I was saying before the test, before the challenge was, not only is today a day of protection, a day of shoring up and being clear about your foundation, it's also a day of direction and the power that govern direction. Oshosi's bows hit their target every time. Oshosi's bows are magical. It is indeed the day of fertility, of planting seeds, of preparation, of planning, of creation and procreation, being proactive in creating and recreating the reality that we all seek and desire each and every day. I appreciate your patience with the technology. I pick up, I keep moving. Thank you so much, Kiona, for always being present for me. I'm broadcasting on both Blog Talk Radio. Oh, wow. Okay, Kiona, I see you. Okay, y'all, that's 17 minutes of me having to work through work through the crossroads today. Thank you so much, Hoodoo Occultism. Kiona, I remember that whole mute button and the Skype thing. So I've had 17 minutes of silence on Blog Talk Radio at the beginning of my show. And 17 minutes of us having to work out YouTube technology. Um, and all is a blessing. I'm here as well, Hoodoo Occultism. I'm here. I'm in the moment. I'm not allowing the technology to interrupt my flow. The technology has not interrupted my train of thought. The technology is not going to interrupt my ability to get the message out today. So again, I appreciate you all's patience and ability to work with me and with the technology on two platforms. Um, not very many people are able to do two platforms at one time without a staff, without a crew, without a budget. So bear with me. All is truly and indeed a blessing. So today is the day of the warriors, if you will, and the powers and the deities that stand up in the warriors. And so within that, we are able to extract the message at any given time, space, that the Loa, that the deities, that the Orisha might want to speak to us. And now is a time of planning. Now it's a time of creating and recreating a reality. We might not be physically mobile, but now it's a time to be mobile, inwardly mobile. Move beyond your comfort zone, move beyond your routine. You've already begun to do that physically, in many cases because you have to. But now move forward inwardly to a new place, a new vision, a new understanding of the reality that is literally being created and recreated for us all, moment by moment, right now in this present moment in time space. Has this gotten real for you yet? Have you accepted the truths of what we're existing in yet? And have you come to an inner standing yet that the world will never be the same? The world will never be the same. The world that we knew before will not be the same. You've heard me talk about Einstein's law of relativity and his philosophies and ideas about time and intra dimensional space, and the understanding that in order for us to have this reality and this shared reality, which is one dimensional space, your personal reality is another dimensional space. But in order for us to have this reality, so we live in a unique time where the reality, the physical reality, sort of coaches us, pushes us all into a place to have sort of a shared reality. And you experience it from your place. I experience it from my place. He experienced it from his place of understanding. She experienced it from her place of understanding. But we share a new reality. And the reality that we existed in before will never exist again and will never be the same. Now, the truth of that is that's the truth every day. That truth, that reality that we exist in the moment, will then never be the same because time is fleeting. Time is indeed in motion. And so right now we're being asked to be still, to be quiet, to be calm, to be creative, to be procreative, to be tranquil, to be at peace, to be patient, even. And in that, our inner reality is shifting, it's moving. This is the time you discover things that you didn't know about yourself. This is time you discover and open new packages and open new gifts of who and what you are that you didn't have time to discover before, that you did not have time to examine before, that you didn't have time to nurture before. We have an opportunity now to nurture our garden, to nurture our garden. our physical gardens, our fruits and our produce and our herbs and our roots and our vegetables, but also our Erica Badu gardens, our consciousness, our minds, our ori, that salad that exists between our ears that we must feed. And we feed it literally and we feed it figuratively. We feed it by giving it rest. We feed it by giving it water. We feed it by giving it food and nourishment. But we also feed it from the inside with information. And right now, some of you are turning off the news, turning off the radio, and that's okay. But turn on some music, turn on some documentaries, turn on some movies that exercise the mind and get your inner world in motion, that get your inner world jumping, doing jumping jacks and push-ups and jogging. And by all means, be creative. I can't tell you. How thankful I am for my sister Wapani. When she shows up in YouTube Live, she's Wapani One. Many of you know her. She, as well as my mother, are both published authors. She taught me how to crochet. So right now I've been working on crocheting crystal bags for various crystals, minerals, and stones. Because you know your quartz crystals all take on a different shape, a different configuration. You know, you can buy ready-made silk bags, ready-made cotton bags, of various ilk. But I like to create my own and just crochet bags to sort of fit, the specific shape and size of the bag that I'm working on. And often I'll measure my crystal. Many of you are familiar with this laser wand. I'll measure my stone, and then I'll just crochet the bag first. And then I'll go back and do, the cord, the neck piece. I find the cords and the neck piece the most grueling. Somebody out there is counting. You see how much time I got on my hands, how many crystal bags I've been working on. Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. But the neck pieces for me are the most grueling, are the most time consuming. The knots get a little bit tighter, the knotting gets a little bit specific. And some of you are exploring right now magic and religion and paganism and ATR and witchcraft and things of that ilk in your downtime, in your productive time. Forgive me for saying downtime, in your productive time. And I want you to also research knotting. 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 I think I spelled that correctly. And it is indeed a magical practice using threads, cords, wire, and then embedding chant work, embedding spell work, embedding mantra work into the process, and it's referred to as knotting. And knotting is used for protection, knotting is used for prosperity, knotting is used for blocking and defense. Knotting is used for generating a general overall sense of well-being and stability by increasing your auric field in a particular place, location, because of course with knotting it's something you could wear, but it's also something that could be utilized in other locations around your house, other locations in your lives, if you will. So when I crochet, I perform knotting and I do mantras, I do chants. I'm very clear about what I'm thinking about when I crochet. Those of you out there who crochet, who knit, who wire jewelry, Tasha, Tasha Love, understand what I'm talking about, where your left brain is occupied by the physical, intellectual, mathematical, scientific routine of what you're performing. And so your hands and your left brain are connected. But then it allows your right brain to take on a whole nother dimensional space. And so now you're thinking about your bills, you're thinking about the weather, you're thinking about something that happened 10 years ago. leaving your body and traveling to various locations and places in time and geographics, because now your right brain is free to activate your moon energy, your spirit energy, your prayer energy, your meditative energy, and indeed your intellectual energy. Always focus on your breathing, whether it's in prayer, whether it's in meditation, whether it's in chanting, whether it's in the course of spell work. Always focus in on your breathing as you do your process, as you perform your ritual. And of course, if you are focusing on your breathing, performing your process, performing your ritual, which requires you to say something, you're now giving your brain, your consciousness, several different tasks to do, which at the most basic level, for those of you who might not be that quite spiritual, who might not quite believe or get or understand what I'm saying, even at a scientific level, even at an intellectual level, even in terms of staving off Alzheimer's and dementia and other forms of mental imbalance, giving your brain's activity, just as we give our body's activity, stimulates growth, stimulates empowerment at every level. And the empowered person, i.e., the person whose chakras are wide open, are clear, are not blocked, are not polluted, who's now operating in these exercises, in these practices, I guarantee you results. It's global. It's historic. I didn't create this. I didn't write this. I just have my own formula by way of getting through the blocks that we hold on to today, the blocks of our generation, the blocks of our present time space. So I implore you, I invite you to exercise, to move around, jump up and down, go swimming, dive into the depths of the ocean, explore the outer world, the outer physical world, the animal world, the insect world, the plant world, but indeed explore the sky, explore space, explore deep space, if you will. But you can do so in the safety, if I can borrow from the rosters, from the safety of your mind, of your consciousness. And by all means, if you're not there yet, if your third eye is not quite there yet, use your imagination. Use your imagination. Be creative. And if it helps you to stimulate your imagination by utilizing the physical, write, draw pictures, paint, play in the mud, play around with your stones and your crystals, do artwork, do clay work, do things that require you to use your hands, that require you to stimulate and occupy your left brain so that your right brain is now allowed some realm of freedom and space. Thank you, Kiona, for the red question marks, and greetings to anyone who I have not acknowledged as of yet, personally, individually. My greetings, my salutations to each and every one of you. Now, let me acknowledge your questions. Hoodoo, occultism. I believe, no, let's see. Yeah, I believe I'm seeing the first question. How how does one deal with white supremacy in the workplace? White supremacy in the workplace as it relates to voodoo, hoodoo, root work, and conjure. It's what I'm assuming that you're referring to. Um, White supremacy in the workplace encompasses just so many things, so many things. And at my most gut level, I say it's first a conflict of identity, a conflict of identity for the individual, for you, for the questioner. Now, let me explain that. Been there, done that. You know, this society, this culture says you get a high school diploma, you graduate and you go into college, or you graduate and you give it some military service and then utilize that to extend, you know, your knowledge, your educational reach. and then you sort of get locked into a career path, 30 years, 50 years, you retire, you get the gold watch and the pension, and that don't exist anymore. And that reality has not existed for a long time. Now, that's one practical way of walking up to answering your question. The second thing is the cultural adaptations that I had to make. Many of you know at the time I had very long dreadlocks, very long dreadlocks. And there was a great deal of prejudice, of bias against dreadlocks in the workplace. What you're seeing today is new. What you're seeing today, dreadlocks in athletics, dreadlocks on the news, dreadlocks in journalism, dreadlocks in entertainment, it's sort of fadding, trending, but a outgrowth, if you will, no pun intended, a foundation that was laid down by the parents and grandparents and elders who was wearing dreadlocks, like myself, when it wasn't fadding, when it wasn't trending, when it wasn't popular. And so a part of that was going to work, getting hired, getting through the interview, and then if you make it in, then addressing it in any particular workspace. Um, in my former life, I was doing security. I was the highest ranked security person in my building. This was pre-Katrina. But I was hired on because of a forward-thinking sister, Tony Val Martinez, who also was working at the same location at the time, who saw my name on a piece of paper. Now, some of you, hopefully all of you are following me because I talked about self-identity, getting clear about self-identity first. And so they saw my name on paper first. Now, of course, the company had already hired me with my dreadlocks. They didn't care. They wanted me for what I knew, for my knowledge, for my skill. Um, and so I'm in the job there with my dreadlocks and all, my silver jewelry and all, my crystals and all. Of course, security required a uniform. I'm in my uniform, but no one else was in dreads. No one else was wearing jewelry. No one else was carrying crystals and stones and setting up a mini shrine on the desk every day when I would, when I would come in. So the white supremacy and the racism and the prejudice and the bias would come from people within my everyday routine. People who occupied space in the building, for instance. People who were coming to visit attorneys and realtors and other entertainers and other professionals who occupied space in this building. That's when I would see, feel, experience, and be exposed to not just racism and white supremacy and prejudice, but also homophobia and sexism from both sides. There's that homophobia that you assume, oh, well, he must be based on A, B, and C. But then there's also that sort of cultural nuance, like the way I'm dressed now. 10 years ago, 15 years ago, I walk out in public, with this outfit on. People would accuse me of wearing a dress. Black people, conscious people, cultural people, because we still had not embraced identity for ourselves. And so whether it's the gay issue, whether it's the black issue, whether it's the consciousness issue, whether it's the spiritual issue, if you don't have your own inner language together, then you have nothing to offer to share to the conversation that supports your platform. And so you're always then in the debate with those who are quick to whip open the Bible or quick to whip open the Quran or quick to pull from some other source to sort of support their system. And we know when we're talking about white supremacy, it's a global, worldwide system. It's not just a UK thing. It's not just a American thing. Racism and white supremacy has been imported, exported globally, internationally, so much so that brothers and sisters are bleaching their skin, so much so that we're not comfortable in our own hair, so much so that we're not comfortable seeing a brother dressed like me with no pants on, with a galbia on, or some other long dashiki African-based outfit on, robe, gown on, who still can't address themselves. And so I had to learn that it wasn't so immediately about who I was, it was more immediately about who they were. Whether we're talking about the racist, the white supremacist, or the ignorant, uneducated person of color, how I look made them think some kind of way about how they look. What I represent means something in terms of what it represents to them. Because understand, if you haven't asked me my opinion, if you haven't asked me why, if you haven't asked me what that means, you don't know what it means. And now we're looking at trending white supremacy, trending racism, trending consciousness, if you will, trending spirituality. Well, let me get some of those beads. Let me get a wrap. Let me wear some beads that represent or look like Ilekis. And so now it's a look of representation. And see, we live in a unique time today because now we can't necessarily share physical space. We can't gather, in public. And so what it looks like, it's going to be very important now moving forward in this virtual reality. And so it's going to look like one thing while a platform of something else could very well be the foundation. Ogu stand up in the foundation. So we have to pay attention while we're being still, while we're being quiet, to the details. Um, I'm still responding to that question. For me, it ultimately, even with the acceptance of that job and that environment, allowing me a position of authority, so to speak, and still represent who and what I was, it still became toxic and problematic for me in terms of other guards, other co-workers, and of course other people in that space. And so you begin to be challenged with the whole notion of, should I be doing this? And that's a common um, symptom, a common malaise, a common thing that people come to me for, who are looking for career work, work-related spirituality, starting new businesses, entrepreneurship, getting out of the system. It's something that you might be surprised to know that I deal with quite regularly. And white supremacy comes up, racism comes up, sexism comes up. And so if you're not willing to stand up in your truth 100%, and that might mean providing your own income, that might be providing your own sustainable resources. My sister Wapani talks about sustainable resources all the time. And the idea that we don't support ourselves, we aren't self-sustaining, we are codependent on brands and commercial enterprises, retail establishments, people, and individuals, and with their own course of ideas and cleanliness and hygiene to supply, almost everything that we need. So I'm a little bit older than a great deal of my audience. I look at it from a place of wisdom now. I look at it from a very different place of understanding now. And so I'm trying to secure housing, permanent housing, long-term housing. What my name on the mortgage, what my name on the deed. Um, Ability to grow greater produce, greater herbs, greater fruit, ability to provide greater service to the community. I don't see a day, and nor will there be a day, when we can envision people separating or wanting to separate. The world is getting smaller. Uh, we don't have that luxury. We don't have that technology to some degree. And so we're having to interact with people of varying ilk every single day. And they are carrying this toxin of white supremacy on them. A mentor of mine reminds me that the first place we have to clean it up is within you. Get the white supremacy out of you. I pay attention to the conversations and the conversations that go way back to Queen Ifama, that go back to Yahoo 360, that go back to the beginnings of Blog Talk Radio when there were many, a dozen or more shows that all wanted to talk about white supremacy, that all wanted to talk about COINTEL, that all wanted to talk about racism. And so my first defense, my first proactive response to that, my first action to the cleaning up of that is voodoo. First for myself, you know, and then my environment, and then those absolutely around me. So you got to decide how concerned are you really? How affected are you really? And how and to what degree is that showing up for you really? And should you even be in that space? It's a question many have had to ask. I had to ask. And I decided for myself that not just because of white supremacy or racism, but for the desire of self-sufficiency, for the desire of being more creative, being able to provide a better service, a greater service, for the idea of wanting to do something better, provide something better. I can do it so much better here than I could from the rock shop. I could do it so much better from here than I can from someone else's space. And so that's how I approach the topic. Um, in terms of just dealing with all sorts of energy, while I was still in that space, I carried crystals, I carried stones, I had programmed stones, I had programmed Grigri for very specific things, very specific people, very specific tasks. Some of my best hoodoo, root work, and conjure methods were sort of sharpened and honed in those workspaces, dealing with racism, dealing with drama, dealing with backbiting, dealing with ego, dealing with gossip. And you can work a miracle with peanut shells if you know what to do with them. If you know what to do with them. Of course, some of these procedures, if you don't apply them right, they fall back on you. And so it's the same idea when we look at racism and white supremacy and what that is. Stevie Wonder once said, Songs in the Key of Life was the album. Be sure that when you say you're not in it, you're not of it. And that you're not helping to create and recreate and keep that alive. A quick witchcraft note, a quick root work note, a quick voodoo secret. Working dark magic, working spells, working curses, binding work. If you indeed are binding something, a person, place, or thing, once you do the work, once you activate the work, you don't mention their name. It goes all the way back to Kemet. It goes all the way back to ancient Egypt and beyond. The remembrance of your name holds your energy. The statuary carved in stone holds your energy, it becomes you, becomes another intra-dimensional form of you. And so the thing that I don't want, don't like, wish to avoid, wish to eliminate, wish to remove, does not exist in my spirit space. Doesn't exist. I don't talk about it. I don't feed it. I don't meditate on it. Now, it's not to say, you have a issue, you have a headache, you know, you ignore it. It's not to say that, but it is to say that you find solutions to, the fix to. And I'm that type of practitioner. That's why I'm result oriented, because I'd rather get straight to what's the problem and then how to fix it. What's the problem and then how to eliminate it. What's the problem and then how to remove it. So I don't go through life as a victim. I don't go through life um, consciously existing in sort of the toxicity of what that is and how that is. It does not remove my ability to confront it, to deal with it when it comes, and in that moment, and often on the spot. And then I bring that back into my workspace. And for me, all things end and begin in voodoo, all things. Even the greatest problems of the world, white supremacy, racism, poverty, sickness, disease, even the greatest issues in the world, a true practitioner, a true spiritualist is often called to address. Now, every practitioner is not called to address the same things, and most certainly not on the same level. Um, but it is to a degree something that I work with, something that I carry. And so I'm doing voodoo right now. I'm invoking the spirits that govern disease and sickness and illness, to include white supremacy, binding it literally and figuratively in the world, but absolutely when it shows up in your space. It's a toxin that's like the virus in the world, and it's almost everywhere in the world, and it's touched everyone in the world. Whether it's left a scar on you or not, it's touched everyone in the world. So it's a big deal. It's as big as breathing. It's as big as maintaining life and health and wellness. Um, and so indeed, it is something that I do bring into the workspace. Absolutely, it's something I'm cognizant of. I've been accused, even though I am the divine, all blessed God. I get hate mail. I've been accused of being a black supremacist. I've been accused of being a racist. Not that I have that kind of platform, but people respond in that way. Again, people respond from where they are. People respond from their understanding. People respond from their positioning. So white supremacists often don't know that they're white supremacist, or understand that they're white supremacist, or identify as white supremacy. And so the system is often driven by blind mice and blind operators, and people who sort of follow. And then there's a small percentage of people who truly hold world power, world control, financial dominance, and then that ability to sort of pass that down as an inheritance to others. The second question, if I need to come back to that hoodoo occultism, just jump right back on in. Animal sacrifice in hoodoo and obeah. Um, Animal sacrifice originates with Fa and Ifa and traditional practice in the old world, or in West Africa, if you will, and in the indigenous worlds. We see it in other locations, in other continents on the planet, ritually, spiritually, specifically. There are many misunderstandings about what animal sacrifice is, what happens to the animals, how they're used. And it is indeed not an act of brutality. It is not an act of waste, and it is not an act of murder or killing for the sake of murder or killing, unless you are indeed a vegan and you are just set in your opinion, and you have a right to your opinion. As a vegan, understand we've had many more, even in the presence of veganism and vegetarianism, before we had the words in its most organic and natural state, we still had indigenous ancestors who utilized animals for their meat, for their skin, for their wool, for their fur, for their animal parts, if you will, as tools, as living implements, but more importantly, as spiritual, religious implements. We see demonstration of animal sacrifice in the Bible for all of my Christian and Islamic and Judaic listeners, which are among us. We see animal sacrifice demonstrated in the Old Testament, and then it suggests to us that the new animal sacrifice is the human sacrifice of the Christ in the New Testament. And so now, you know, you cannibals are drinking blood, ceremonially, and eating the body, the corpse, ceremonially, symbolically, ritualistically, and in my world, that's voodoo, and that's human sacrifice, as opposed to the sacrifice of the lamb, as opposed to the sacrifice of the chicken, as opposed to the sacrifice of the goat. So there's a lot of misunderstanding and illusions and delusions, and of course, um, the utilization of creative allowance in artistic and entertainment and creative endeavors have sort of polluted the idea of what animal sacrifice is. It's a part of a petition. It's a part of a prayer. Uh, it's a form of a libation, but the blood seen as a life giving force, and that thing that sort of surges through all of humanity and mammal and animal creation is applied in a ritual to give power and force, often to a deity, to a loa, to a orisha. Um, there's really no other context outside of that in which the blood is offered in hoodoo or in a obia ceremony. Um, the Kabbalah. The Kabbalah is a ancient tradition that originates from Jewish culture, and from the books that the Jewish community pulls their teachings and their religious understanding with. And you find a similarity to not just the Kabbalah, but the culture associated with it in Sufi Islam and in Coptic Christianity. There's this uh, orthodox traditional branch that sort of takes off and goes its own direction, and then there's this spirit branch of these traditions that carry some of the magical ritual mysteries of these traditions. So the Kabbalah is sort of an offshoot of Judaic teaching and culture. It is separated from the book, the culture, the religion, as many of these practices are once we sort of incorporate them into occult practice, spiritual practice, paganistic practice from this modern perspective. And it becomes a part of that gumbo pot, that I preach against all the time, of just sort of dissecting what we want, what we need, taking a little bit of this and taking a little bit of that, and we often take it out of context. And then when we can't make sense of the complexities of the foundations of these practices and these traditions, then we sort of just do our thing with it. So Kabbalah is an extension of Judaism and Judaic tradition and practice, and it originates from their mystery schools from the ancient world. A great place to explore that. It's a book that I've supported and promoted on this show many times, and no, I don't get anything for supporting it, other than the fact that it contains some great information, and that is The Secret Teachings of the Ages by Manly P. Hall, and it has a great foundational platform for Kabbalah, what Kabbalah is, how the Kabbalah compares to the chakra system, how the Kabbalah compares to deity systems. I've seen the Orisha worked into the Kabbalah tree. I've seen the Loa worked into the Kabbalah tree. I've seen other systems thus applied. And that resonates with the notion as is above, so shall it be below, your six-pointed star. And that is the notion that truth applies on the ground and in the sky. And truth applies across language, across culture, across understanding to some degree. And so it's easy to find synchronicity. It's easy to find similarity. It's easy to find appropriation of many traditions showing up in other traditions, somewhat innocently, in just trying to be human and making a comparison. It's human to want to compare. It's human to find a place of understanding for what we're seeing, hearing, experiencing on the outside. So whether it's from your memory and comparing it to something you remember, something you understand, something you've seen before, something you've heard before, it's human nature to do that. But it becomes problematic when we don't study these systems, absorb these systems, experience these systems first from an organic level, in order, naturally, individually, and then make some comparison. I am as articulate and fluent as I am in spirituality and religion because of years of study, years of sitting at the feet of elders, years of reading books, and not just some books, all books. So much so that when you hear the fallacies, you recognize them. There's certain topics, certain subjects you can talk about. I can tell you what book you're talking about. I can tell you what author you're talking about. But the same thing applies for the good stuff, and it comes from that college level, university level, and it absolutely can be self-done. I'm careful about saying self-taught, self-done, by doing the work. So then when you do step into initiation, training, school, you have a better understanding of what's happening. Our young people often leave the 11th grade, the 12th grade, go right into college. They haven't done a whole lot of study about chemistry, except for what was done in high school. But there are going to be subject matter in chemistry, biology, math, earth science, social sciences that were never talked about in high school. And they get right in there like sponges and they sort of suck that information up. And we somehow believe that that's limited to the youth, that's limited to young people, that's limited by age. And your mind is one part of your body that really does not age like the rest of your body does. It's the one part of your body that stays young and that stays healthy as long as you stay young and you stay healthy. As long as you feed it water, literally and figuratively. Water also symbolically means knowledge, means truth, means information, and you want to be fluid. You want to be refreshed. You want to have a wellspring of information, of experience to draw from, literally and figuratively. We don't all have to smoke crack to know crack kills. We don't all have to do harm to know doing harm has a really bad outcome for all parties involved. But we absorb that through experience. And many of us are too codependent on just what we see. So you're seeing it through television, you're seeing it through media, you're absorbing it through gossip, you're absorbing it over the fence, over the phone, off the stoop. But we're not doing like we did, and often our young people are sort of forced to do, encouraged to do, motivated to do study, to do reading, to do their homework. We as adults don't have that. That's the first thing I noticed at the college level. You don't have anyone, especially if you're on campus, that's over you that says, do your homework, do your lab time, make sure you get your paperwork done, because you're supposed to be an adult now. You're supposed to be a free thinker now. You're supposed to be responsible for now and take command and authority for now. So I know I digressed a little bit, as I often do on this show, but I appreciate your questions. I appreciate your comments. Yeah, Hoodoo absolutely has spirits. Hoodoo is not just about rituals and practices. Hoodoo is not just about I'm gonna burn my candle, you know, um, and make magic happen. There is indeed intention there. There is indeed forethought that goes into that. But there are also certain powers, certain elements that are being pulled from, that are being drawn on in nature and in the spirit realm when hoodoo is being performed. So often when you see hoodoo, you see elements of a deity. You see elements of a power that are being worked, that are being applied, that are being utilized in the ritual, in the trick, in the fix, in the gree, if you will. Of course, there's also going to be some sort of diagnosis, something else that you don't often hear with hoodoo, root work, conjure, any talk about diagnosis, hence divination. So again, spirits are going to be speaking, spirits are going to be called upon, spirits are going to be fed in the process of divination. And of course, the form of divination utilized. We have very specific forms of divination utilized in hoodoo, um, and they don't include tarot. And they don't include tarot. Dead air, dead air calling in Kiona. Or no, no, no. I think my chat rolled up on me. Or is that right now? Am I having a Blog Talk Radio issue right now? Oh wow, what's going on? What's going on? Blog Talk Radio, what's going on? I'm not getting any indication on this end at all that anything is happening out of the ordinary in Blog Talk Radio. And you're no longer on the phone line with me either, Kiana, which would be helpful to me testing the line. Because if you can hear me now, but you're not on the phone line, your text responses are going to be delayed. Are going to be delayed. This is a hoodoo, voodoo, root work, ATR, traditional African-based religious systems. It would be real easy for me to talk to every world culture and every world religion. I would say be sure that you are of it. Be sure it's of your bloodline, Greg. Be sure it's of your lineage before you explore it, before you try and operate in it. And it's not just a response to your question. That's my response to tarot. That's my response to runes. That's my response to using cowrie shells and using palm nuts. That's my response to almost anything except mineral, crystal, and stone, which is indeed universal, absolutely universal, which requires study, which requires having some knowledge, some mineralogical knowledge, some geological knowledge, But when we start getting into these systems, Kabbalah, Be sure it's of your bloodline. Be sure it's of your lineage. Be sure it's a system that you should even stand up in and operate from within. Okay, Kiona, what I'm going to do is, wow. Oh, wow. My goodness. My Blog Talk Radio show in the archive is a waste. Oh, my goodness, Kiona. And the problem is me. The problem is me. Put your YouTube on mute. Your because your mic is open, Kiona.
Okay.
The problem is
Okay.
me. I still had Blog Talk Radio in mute. I have to unmute Blog Talk Radio in 3 locations: on the desktop,
Oh wow.
on the browser, I mean, on the Skype, and then twice in the Skype, and then in the Blog Talk Radio platform. It's just crazy. So, yeah, that's an hour and 8 minutes of wasted airtime on my Blog Talk Radio. So, forgive me. I'm probably going to still let this tape go into archive. Um, I don't know if I can edit it in any way and shave off that silent part. Maybe Blog Talk Radio will shave off that silent part automatically. But thank you, Kiona, for being present, because I wouldn't have known if you hadn't have told me. And I didn't have my browser,
You most welcome.
I didn't have my tab open either, so I couldn't see that no one was even, in the Blog Talk Radio switchboard to alert me to what was happening. So thank you.
You most welcome. That's what I'm here for. But I'm listening to the show, and I couldn't agree with you more. Our lives will never be the same, physically or spiritually.
Yes, yes, all is a blessing. I dazed out for a second. Did you just ask a question or no?
No, no, I was just chiming in, giving feedback.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I do. I do. Um, Kayla, talk. Now you've been here long enough to know better. Why your question is not in capital letters, I do not know, but I am going to respond to
You
you.
still don't let us.
What you say, Kiana?
She says that she's having difficulties. Anytime she types her questions or comments in capital letters, it won't even post.
Oh,
It won't
okay.
even hide it where we could see it.
Oh, okay. Forgive me, beloved, for talking smack. Forgive me. She's asking the other day. She was startled out of her sleep to a heat sensation of as fire on her finger. Um, First, I would want to know, what finger are we talking about? I also think it's important to keep a journal. That's why I keep saying keep a journal, because I'm going to ask, what were you dreaming about? What went on that day, or what went on before, and then what went on after? And that's the importance of keeping the journal, grimoire, magical book, whatever you want to call it. That is the importance of keeping that level of detail to help clarify your own unique and individual symbolism. Now, your middle finger is the fire finger. That is the finger that uh, universally represents fire symbolically. But it could also be a sign of activation, depending on what finger the heat was passing through. Um, for instance, if it's passing through the fire finger, for instance, your middle finger, for instance, it resonates with the element of fire and the spirits that inhabit fire. There are certain Orisha, for instance, Iganyu, said to be Shango's father, who is a spirit of fire, inhabits fire. We say Ogu has some fire elements, but Ogu is iron. But there's a fire element to it. So that's why I say identify the finger, earth, water, fire, air, and then ether or mind, and then pay attention to the symbolism that are in association with those elements. So your pointer finger, or your index finger, we call it, and heat, and then we're looking at what hand are we talking about, because your left hand is your receiving hand. It resonates, it connects to your right brain activity. So it's your receiving hand, the receiving of energy, the receiving of information, the receiving of a communication, etc. Your right hand is your projective hand, the hand in which we push from, project from, send things out from, even release from. So there are many ways that I would interpret that symbolism, but I would need more detail. And that requires you keeping greater detail. What were you dreaming about? What happened before? What happened after? Had you done any particular type of ceremony? Is it just out of the blue? And then look at the elements. Look at the elements that are involved and how those elements speak. Elements show up in tarot decks, for instance. You have a card that represents fire, your swords, Ogu. You have a card that represents earth. That is your coins, your pentacles. You have a card that represents water. That is, of course, your cups, and so on. I know I skipped one. I missed one, but your your cups, your swords. Um, what am I missing, y'all? Your rods, your rods, your rods, which elementally represents the air, and things that move through the air. The ether and the deities that speak through the ether show up as your master cards, and so those are going to be powers, and angels show up as your fours, and God and the goddess shows up as the number 10. So there's science, there's an order, there's a process to things, and so it requires learning numerology on its own. It requires learning astrology and an experience plate. Let's see. Yeah, that's your receiving hand. That's your receiving hand, and your ring finger is water, and that's about needing for a receiving of information. Information. So something is being communicated to you. Something is being said. Something is being presented, or you're already operating in something in which the spirit realm is suggesting you need more information. You need more, and more specifically to information, knowledge, wisdom in. Because water is not just information, water is wisdom, reason, because it's in balance, and water always seeks its own balance. Um, we appreciate you. Yeah, Kiona, I was trying not to go there, but that's fine. You're doing good. I was not to get too far off in there because I'm not a Kabbalistic practitioner. I'm not a Jew. I don't practice those sciences. I would love to invite guests and experts on the show to represent other systems in the context of revolutionary hoodoo, New Orleans voodoo secrets and recipes. I remember once upon a time, Papa Say talked about some connection between hoodoo and Huthatic Jews, and that necessarily being some kind of connection um, to hoodoo, and some of what we know and understand as hoodoo. It would have had to been brought to the U.S. by the Puerto Rican community. So, in the Cuban community to some degree. So, it's a complex issue. it steers me away from voodoo, and that's why I didn't address that directly. That's why I didn't um, address that specifically.
I apologize about that for overstepping
Oh no, you.
because I saw it because some people feel because you're on a different path that we're all connected,
Mm-hmm.
and in some degree we are, but we're definitely separated. And a lot of times people will come and ask you questions about the um the uh the goetic demons. There are no goetic demons in voodoo.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're on the left hand path, then that may be something that you may want to, ask questions on,
And
or
that's
then
what.
they may want to ask.
Go ahead.
I'm here.
No, I was just going to say.
Oh yeah, and so a lot of times. No, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, yeah, not necessarily separate, but different. You know,
Different.
even when we say, we're humans, we're all the same. Okay, we have humanistic characteristics that are the same. Humans feel pain. Humans feel fear. Humans need to eat. Humans need to, shit. Humans can fall
Mm-hmm.
off.
Mm-hmm.
Humans can develop
Yep.
addictions. But we're all unique and individual. And when we're talking about spirit paths and spiritual paths, spirit development, then now we're talking about what makes us unique, what makes us individual, but it also is about what elevates us, what makes us higher. So it's a lot of things that I know and I'm aware of that I share. And let me be honest, that I share to a great degree, much more openly with my godchildren and with my initiates. But then there's other things that I just, certain issues. You don't see no rainbow flags because that's not my platform. I don't quote from the Bible a lot, though I know the Bible very well because that's not my platform. I also have learned, Greg, over the years, in area code 931, your mic is open. I'm coming to you momentarily, that certain things, if I say them online, I affirm them for some people, and then they go out and do them. Then they go out and apply them. So I always have to preference what I say. I always have to respond with, is it in your lineage? Is it in your bloodline? Has it been generated by the appropriate divination, the appropriate process? People are crowning themselves stuff. People are labeling themselves stuff. People are choosing stuff, which is what we do. We're here to choose. We're here to make a decision to be, but then we do the work. Then we address the real pathway of achieving that goal, of becoming that person, of becoming that particular thing. Area code 931. I'm not familiar with that area code, so please tell me, where are you calling from and who's calling?
Greetings, divine friends. So this is actually Kayla.
Hey,
I'm
Kayla.
calling from my boyfriend's phone, but I'm from Florida.
Thank you so much.
Hello.
Yes, thank you so much. What's going
So
on?
first of all, thank you for answering my question regarding my finger. I was trying to call in earlier because YouTube does give me issues trying to type in my questions in all caps. But my second question that I have for you, so I've seen recently over in Egypt, they have these archaeologists digging up tombs and recently discovered one that was like 4,000 years old. And I was curious and wondering if doing something like that, like they unburied it, opened it up, exposed the mummy and everything, if that could like bring wrath onto people from the spirit world for tampering with those type of things, especially being that it's so ancient as well.
Yeah, and that's not a new concept. It's revived every time they find a new tomb. Every time they discover undamaged mummies, it's revived every time we see Egypt and Kemet on display. I'm going to answer your question, and I'm also going to answer hoodoo occultism's question. Absolutely, hoodoo and voodoo have ties to Kemet. I say and teach, as my elders did, that voodoo is the oldest organized religion in the world. So whether you're looking at the Sumerians, the Meroe, Egypt, Timbuktu, the indigenous America, the indigenous Asian and Asiatic peoples and tribes, you're going to see a footprint of ritual practice, the acknowledgments of deities, the acknowledgement of animism, which is the understanding, the belief, the understanding that all things in the physical space have some spirit attachment to them, have a spirit within them, and then can also have a spirit attachment upon them or to them. So absolutely, there's a connection between hoodoo, voodoo, with ties to Kemet in ancient Egypt, and so the idea of cursing, of disturbing sacred ground, of disturbing ancestral lands stands up strong in Kemet. Please forgive me. So if y'all would give me a moment just to respond, and then I'll keep talking. They just saw my light on. Please forgive me, y'all. It's a live chat.
No, it's definitely a great show. And Kayla, thank you so much for your question.
Thank you, Kiana.
Well, that Ninkapala came from the tree of the Kemet.
This is the first time I've ever done this.
People,
Go ahead, Kiana. Please talk.
a lot of times people will tie in the left. A lot of times people will tie in the left-hand path with other ATR in it's a religion, where the left hand path within itself isn't a religion. They teach you on becoming the spirits and basically becoming your own God. So a lot of times people confuse themselves because they tie in, too many paths and too many spirits, and it causes confusion. And sometimes a lot of people, they can cause a lot of chaos in their lives. And some people don't know how to control chaos. Some people don't know how to maneuver in chaos. It's not something easy to be done. So I personally work with spirits that chose me. Even though I may have been interested in working with some, they weren't interested in working with me. That's the way I do it. I'm not saying that is right or everyone should do it that way, but I work with spirits that want to work with me, that chose me, and that makes it easier for me.
That's good. Please keep talking. Give me a moment to finish this.
Yes, because I know it's times where I've called out, to spirits respectfully and asking for guidance, and I didn't get a response. And I know it's times where I've called out to archetypes and also to deities, and I got a response almost immediately before I could swallow my saliva. So I think when people are on paths, it's okay to study. I encourage studying, study every path. But when you start to practice, you're gonna have to get initiated and be committed to one. It's okay to know about other spirits in paths, but be committed to one. Because a lot of people still want to bring up the Bible, but a double-minded man is unstable in all his ways. You have to be consistent with something. It's why it's called a ritual, something that you do over and over and over and over again. And you have to get under a good house. You have to. I don't care what path you're on. You have to get under someone who knows this, who knows how to master it. Because when that spirit takes over, if you do not know how to control it, if you do not know how to work with it, you can hurt yourself and everything around you, and cause sickness upon yourself and everything around you. So you have to know what to do, and you won't know this if you don't have covering, if you don't have a godfather
That's
that
right.
knows what they're doing, that's not trying to take all your money.
That's right. And it's the same for all of us, not just the elders, for everyone. Sometimes when you're young or middle age, you feel like the elders are just preaching, preaching, preaching. But it's a reality that we've all had to do, had to step up to in the process of our own growth. If you refuse, if you continue to go with that self initiation thing, life is going to continue to um, life is going to continue to kick you in the ass, teach you the lessons, take you to the crossroad.
Because we know on our path, Prince, that or God, that we can control our demons because we know our demons are a part of us. Some people, if a demon come around or an intranquil spirit come around, they lose their mind. They run right back to the church because they're scared out of their boots because they don't know what's going on. You know, and that's funny to me because it's like if you're under a proper house and you have the proper guidance and you're being taught how to use your powers and your gifts, why are you afraid of a spirit when you're a spirit? And the spirit is needing you, the vessel, to do any work. Like, what are you afraid of?
People are often afraid of the work. I don't think it's just the spirits or the energy, but the work that might be attached to it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, I found the funniest thing. I'll never forget when I had lost my mind during my dark night of the soul. And during my dark night of the soul, when I tell you, I felt that I was being. You know that saying when they said with the phoenix, when the phoenix says that when the phoenix says that they praise the day that the ashes covered their eyes because it meant that creation had released them from the fiery furnace. And so they had come out and they were the evolved phoenix, you know, and they were so much better, but they had to go through the fire. And so I never forget, I was just all over the place. I decided I can't do church no more. This is not feeding me. My third eye was open. I was completely awake. I was sensitive to everything. And I decided to mosey on down. And you can cut me off at any time whenever you're ready, because I'm just not. I'm trying not to have dead air, so I'm just talking.
Go ahead. I'm still in the reading.
And I never forget. I never forget during my dark night of the soul. I'm laughing now, but it wasn't funny then. I was searching on the left hand path, and I said, you know what? I'm gonna call out to a demon. I'm sick of this. I need some results. And they kept saying that, the female energy is this, and you get results. And I did what the lady said to do, and nothing. So I was like, wait a minute. Y'all can torment me, but when I need help, you can't help me. And when I tell you, I never did it again, but it was the most funniest thing. And I had to find humor in that moment because the dark night of the soul is not for the faint of heart. It pulls everything out of you. It stretches you to where you some people can't survive what you go through.
Mm-hmm.
And you didn't even realize that you had what was in you. And once it's over with, but you don't know how long it's going to take to be over with.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not because somebody cursed you. And it's not because you did anything. And it's not because you got this karma. It's really because you have to go through it as a part of your journey to evolve and become the God and goddess that you were created to be.
You're going to be made to do the
when
work.
You look back on
You're going to be made to do the work one way or the other. That there is no shortcut around it. There's no shortcut around it.
And the sacrifice is not, when you're going to say, oh, I'm going to do. No. When you're called on this path, you can't run away from it. You cannot run away from it. You could try, but it's coming.
Yes, please forgive me. I'm with you. I'm completed my task. I made sure I'm signed out of the psychic world at least until the end of the broadcast. And
Hoodoo occultism, you might want to go ahead before it goes into archive And just press 1 to unmute your mic. We're just holding just a sidebar conversation.
Please.
Excuse me, because the business is being wrapped up.
My
But
call-in number is
yeah,
area
this
code 845-277-9143. 845-277-9143. When you're ready, press the number 1 on the telephone keypad. I'll be more than happy to to unmute your mic and allow you into the conversation. Yeah, the depths of Olokun represent not just the subconsciousness, but the unknown. In some cases, the unknowable, but indeed the mysteries of life, of the universe, of the sea, if you will, because we understand the sea to be the realm of the ancestors, and so the ancestors occupy the sea in terms of symbolism. Am I missing any questions in the chat? Thank you for your comments. Thank you for your participation. Thank you for your support. Thank you for your offerings and your donations. I most certainly do appreciate you, particularly right now in this most present time space. Many of you know you can't buy toilet paper, you can't buy meat, you can't buy dairy products in many stores, and in many cases you can't even access them online. So all that we can do to share and to be neighborly and to be helpful to one another um, is what we need, is what we require right now in this most present moment in time space. Let me check my
I have
phone.
a question.
Sure. Go ahead, and then I'm going to unmute area code 318.
And I love you because if I'm wrong, you will check me on the spot. Just like a good parent will. But I have a question, and I know better, but I just really want to hear you say it to me. So I had a reading couple weeks, 2 or 3 years ago, and I started to see the results from it come to pass. And instead of allowing it to play out, I started to interfere.
You had a reading from
And with
me?
me interfering it,
You had a reading from me?
from somebody here local, from someone here locally, and it was this was been a long time ago. I haven't even spoken to that person in forever, and so it started to happen what they said, but anything they said prior to that particular reading, nothing ever came to fruition. It was just that particular reading I started to see, and I almost drove myself crazy chasing after it, and then the rejection came, right? And for just 2 or 3 years, it's been on my mind every single day because I am flipping out because it started to come to pass. And then when I started to delve into it and look into it more, the rejection came.
So what's
And
your...
for some reason, I can't let it go. No, I was going to ask you, do you find that to be, or have in the past found it to be annoying or a challenge when you see a reading come to pass and then there's an interference and a blockage and it's something that you really wanted to explore?
Not for me, no. Not for me,
Okay.
no. And that's why I asked, did I do that reading? Who gave you that reading? No.
No, you didn't.
A truth is going to transfer no matter who's saying it, no matter what the scenario, no matter what the situation. So I would have to question the context of the reading. I would have to question the context of the reading. Typically, if
Mm-hmm.
there's a problem coming, I see a problem, and I make it clear. Now, it doesn't mean that the client always listen. Don't mean that the client always hear me. It doesn't mean that the client always
Mm-hmm.
follows directions. So I have to question the source of the reading first in order to give a really qualified response to that. Um, that's
Yeah.
not something typically that I find um, unless something was not addressed from the outset. It's just like diagnosis. If you don't take the appropriate labs, if you don't apply the appropriate tests, the appropriate X-rays, and then you later find out a problem. Well, you didn't do your appropriate work. The appropriate due diligence wasn't done up front in the first, and that shows up on the table in any reading, regardless of the tool used. Area code 318. What's your question? And who's calling and where are you calling from?
Oh, this Voodoo occultist, aka Supreme Divinity.
Greetings, beloved.
And greetings. How you doing?
All is a blessing. All is a blessing. I'm staying in position.
Okay. And I'm calling from Beaumont, Texas.
Yes, beloved. What's your question?
Okay. When I try to go to your site, it's not pulling up. And I'm trying to figure out the reading prices and the prices to get service done and seek initiation with you.
Now I'm on my site now, and I'm not having a problem. Um, Give me a
Okay.
second. Hold on. Give me a second, because there's one page within the site that uses a different driver, and it was not working the other day, but it seems to be working fine right now. So yeah,
Okay.
when you go to www.houseofthedivineprince.com and you click on the
Mhm.
services tab, there you find a list of prayer, intercession, gregories, ritual cleansings and purification, ancestral services and practice, um, complete readings and divinations and consultations, lave tet, hands cleansings, or rework. Um, I see a couple of typographical errors, but it's working.
Okay. Okay. And that's all I really have to ask. I asked most of my questions in the chat today.
And absolutely, if you send me an email, DivinePrince at houseofthedivineprince.com, I'm always going to respond to that
Okay.
with detailed
Um.
information
Oh,
about
another.
whatever particular service it is that you're seeking.
I wanted to know which of the readings are the proper ones to do for initiation.
You want to do the
To read.
yes, you want to do the ritual work and initiation divination. Again,
Okay.
I'm looking at my page. It's not on my page. So I don't know what happened. I don't know if in order to fix it, GoDaddy had to go in there and manually reload it, and they mixed up some of my information because some of the information on here is not it's not right. But if you send me an email
Mm-hmm.
request, it would absolutely be correct in the email request
Okay.
because I'm always going to
I'm
respond
trying
to.
to pull
Go ahead.
what you. I'm trying to pull it up now. It's not pulling up for me. So I'm gonna just
What's not pulling up the website?
I'm gonna yeah the website.
Okay. I mean, I can't fix it now.
Yeah.
Um,
Oh.
while I'm live on air.
Okay.
I
Yeah.
can get
Yeah.
I can get the website.
Yeah,
Greetings, guys. This is Yana. I can get it. I click right on the link, and I put the link in the chat. If you want to just click on it, it'll direct you.
Okay. Let me click this ad.
yeah. And there are process to initiation, and it's different for everybody. Some people come in directly in initiation. Some people stop and get their ancestral work and divination done, but that could be demonstrated a little bit better on my site. But as I said, I'm looking at my site. There's clearly stuff on here
It's
that
not pulling up from my phone. I don't know why,
Okay,
but
just send me an email.
Chance to check it out because it's working.
Yeah.
okay. Thank y'all.
All right. All is a blessing.
Do you have any more questions?
Um, I got one question. I got one question for you. Um, um, Now I see a lot of other priests, and I've been studying for a while. I studied under a good priest. I'm not with him no more because it was never official. It was just over the internet. He was teaching me for free. But um, I noticed with a lot of priests that they don't have the intellectual, metaphysical understanding that you do. You understand? Like, they don't, it's like you mix, it's not mixing anything, but you have a plethora of information, for your students, and you read books, and you've done a lot of different things, you've been a lot of different places. Do you recommend, people to go to priests that's not well-rounded in information outside of their system?
I mean, people can, if people do. I think any qualified practitioner has to have some knowledge that extends beyond just one particular thing. Um, an athlete, a musician, a doctor, a nurse is going to have a wide variety. When we go to high school, when we go to college, we take more than one class in order to have what's called a well-rounded education, a well-rounded understanding. I don't think a minister um, can preach, from just the Bible, and all they've ever read is just the Bible. They've never studied the Bible. They've never used a dictionary or a thesaurus. They've never studied history, Greek history. They've never studied Amharic history. They've never studied language. So they have a very limited understanding of what they're reading, what they're reciting, often what they're regurgitating. They're only going to repeat what was said to them. They're only going to repeat what's commonly repeated. And we say things that are often not contextually correct just because it's been repeated. It's been said. It's now a part of the quote unquote tradition. So I think any true spiritual practitioner has to have a variety of information, particularly if they're operating in ATR, has to have a variety of information. Unfortunately, there's what's organic, what's indigenous, what's unmoved, what's unchanged, what wasn't colonialized, what hasn't been, corrupted. But then you have the Middle Passage and its effect on this information. Then you have modern culture and its effect on this information. How we do it here in the States is different than West Africa. It's different than Haiti, primarily because of accessibility. What people have the availability to buy and have access to. It doesn't necessarily speak to what people.
My experience, and I'm pretty sure you have ran into people like this. It's. Do you think people?
Okay, I question again. Somebody just kept calling, just refused to stop calling, and so I couldn't hear your question. So ask your question again.
Okay. Do you think people are just paying for initiation and not getting any information or learning anything from the tradition?
Absolutely. In 85% of the case. Absolutely. Absolutely. 85% of the case. And I really want to say the spirits are pushing me to say more like 90% of the case. Because y'all just too thirsty. And when I say y'all, I mean African Americans, I mean Americans, I mean people who live in the UK, I mean, people who live in Asia, y'all just too thirsty. Just too thirsty. And so they want your money. They want your money. Some of them want your time. That's when you start getting into the, the sexual advances and the inappropriate behavior and folks getting real personal and all this other kind of stuff. But the first thing is they want your money. They want to take advantage of the idea that, it's popular for you right now. I don't mean you, caller. I mean the general populace. What I refer to as the Orisha romance community. People who we see often in social media where it is about what it looks like. And so people are rushing to so-called initiation for acceptance, for belonging, for looking like they're a part of what's happening and what's going on right now. They might say, "What I'm about my spiritual growth. I'm about my spiritual truth. I'm about doing the work," but then they don't do the work. You know, and you can do the work before you even get into the initiation by finding out what is initiation, what does it look like, what does it involve, what does it entail, who should be present before you even jump out in there. The other part of that rush is wannabe practitioners, overnight witches. You know, people want to operate as witches, not as Ianifas, not as trained Babalaos, not as trained Mambos, not as qualified Hogans, not as qualified, Obia and Bokurs. People want to act as witches. And so if they can do that through Ifa, if they can do that through Voodoo, if they can do that through Lukomi or Santeria, learn a little bit of the language, and then do what they want to do, i.e., set up services. Kayla has asked us about that before. They immediately want to set up services. They immediately want to sell you readings. They immediately want to claim it as a vocation. So that's the rush. That's the rush to this. And it's harmful because many of them come back. Not just to me, but to other elders, to other teachers, to other leaders, bruised, beat up, injured, having harmed themselves, having taken on godchildren, or providing readings for people now. And now the vampiric energy with that has attached onto them. And it's more than they can handle. Now they can't sleep at night. Now they can't eat. Now their life is being interrupted and disrupted by the jinn and the demons and the lower lying energies that always exist in providing service. Because particularly with voodoo and anything that looks like voodoo, it's going to attract, I think you were the one who said this in the chat the other day. You said voodoo is going to attract crazy, mental health. You might not have used those words, but it was something to that effect. But also people who are on the outs, who are spiritually set aside, who do feel isolated virtually in their world. So once you start selling tarot card readings, selling gree bags, you're not only latching yourself on to people's hopes, people's desires, people's prayers, but you're also latching on to people's fears, people's ignorance, and in some cases, people's ego, people's ugliness. People can turn real dark real quick. People can turn real evil real quick. What showed up as an angel early on is then darkness and fire and witchcraft, really behind the scenes. And witchcraft, if I haven't said it enough on this show, is about ego. It's about the inverted signs of nature: earth, water, fire, air, and ether, or the mind, which is our access into the ethereal spaces, and our ability to want to control that, to want to change that, to want to manipulate that. Voodoo flows with nature. Voodoo is in rhythm with nature at every level. So it kills me when people's eyes roll up in their head when I talk about what you're eating, what you're drinking, how you're living. If you've ever had a real authentic Ifa divination, a real authentic voodoo fa divination, it has taboos, it has proverbs, it has things you must avoid, it has things that you must do. And this is in there. Some of you can't eat citrus fruit. Some of you can't eat fish. Some of you can't fool with certain colors because of the power that you serve, because of the deity that crowns your head. So people are in a rush to this, and just like beauty, just like losing weight, how many weight loss commercials are there? How many weight loss products are there? And how many of them are outward scams? How many of them have just a little bit of truth in it, and then there are many more of them that have that much truth in it, and the rest is complete fiction, but that truth remains the same. You got to watch what you eat, you got to watch what you drink, you got to move around and exercise, and you got to change how you think. The elements, you got to hit it from all five elements that humans and humanity have access to. So people are looking for the shortcut, beloved, and it hurts them every time. It burns them every time. I'm seeing in Instagram and in people with thousands of followers because they've managed to manipulate technology and pop cultural imagery, and so their page is popular. People like what they're seeing every day, and the snappy, shady comments that they make, but you're not seeing any footprint back to. You're not seeing any comments and ratings publicly, displayed about any real power, any real change, any real adjustment, anything that's really being, of value. I see love and relationships. I see, let me bind you to your man. Let me bind you to your woman. I see, let me make you rich. Let me make you prosperous, overnight. I see them pulling at our ego, pulling at our carnality, pulling at our flesh, pulling at our desires, just like the TV commercials that come on between midnight and 4 o'clock in the morning, you know, pulling at your feelings, presumably when you're either at your drunkest, your weakest, your most tired, whatever you are between midnight and 4 in the morning. That's when they put those commercials on. So it's just now transferred to the internet. It's now transferred to social media. And we see that as sort of a representation of ATR. But that don't stand up at the ground level. That don't stand up on the street. Here in New Orleans, we see people come, they open up shops, gift shops, with a hoodoo slant to them, a voodoo slant to it, some cultural nuance symbolically implanted in them. And some of them succeed and some of them don't. But we don't confuse it with authentic practice. We don't confuse it with authentic tradition no more than you would, a dentist in the middle of the French Quarter. I know they do that in India. They do it in certain places in Africa, but typically our dentists don't sit out in the French Quarter on a crate, with a card table, and take care of real work. So it's flesh that makes them rush to initiations like that. It's greed that makes them rush to initiation like that. Rarely is it any idea, any knowledge, any notion of the amount of work and time that's going to be involved. I equate initiation to online college. And you can indeed do legitimate online college, but it's no less work. It's no less work. You're still going to have to read, study, write those papers, take those quizzes, take
60
those
seconds.
exams. You're still going to have to do the work. And I describe initiating with
Mm-hmm.
me similarly to initiating in college. I'm the product of education. My mom's a retired school teacher. She operated like a teacher at home, and it shows up in how I teach. It shows up in how I instruct. Paul Cologne, who sometimes shows up here in our chat, is one of my best godchildren. He's a witness. He'll tell you sometimes it's overwhelming, and I'm consistent. If I've given it to you, if I've copied and pasted, if I've emailed it to you, I absolutely expect you to memorize it. If you can't memorize, at least know where it is and be able to pull it up,
10 seconds.
on the fly when I ask you about it in the middle of the phone call or in the middle of the Skype lesson. You know, we have to be serious about doing the work, and I believe that this time that we're in right now pushes that. Whether it's about your spirit, whether it's about your career, whether it's about your education, right now you thinking about that. Some of you are under duress and you're thinking about that. Others are not under duress. Your job might not be at threat. My job might not be at threat. But we're being pushed under duress at a spirit level, at a spiritual level, as we move through this time. We've got to make that change. And shortcuts won't do it, beloved.
Mm-hmm. And right now, only thing I do is astrology reading. I've been doing it since I was 13, but I've been studying spirituality for about 4 years, right? But right now, at this point where I'm at now, I can do some work for myself, but I don't feel that I have, if you understand astrology, I have the 12th house in Virgo, so it's mean like spiritual perfection. I don't feel like I'm ready to jump out there and offer anybody else spiritual work because first I have the book, but I don't have the practical knowledge. You know what I mean? And I felt that I need to sit under somebody because I learn better. I learn better with hearing things. I learn better with. I'm a better audio learner than I am a reader. But I feel that I haven't sat under anybody long enough for me to feel entitled to do work for anyone else. You know what I mean? To go full blown giving someone else advice. And right now I'm only 26 years old. And I've only been studying this for 4 years. You know what I mean? I don't feel. And there's some people that's my age that's bold enough to do it and don't have a long background of doing any type of study. You know, but I am for real about. That's why I'm in your chat every time. I'm on asking questions and trying to get the most out of the opportunity that's presented in front of me. And I definitely understand what you mean because it's tough doing work for people. And I see a lot of people that just want to look the way, want to, look like a priest, talk like a priest, say elbow, say, all the Risha prayer, say all, and I'm like, do you have any idea of what you really talking about? Or are you just reciting what somebody else said? Do you know the reason why you doing this? Do you know the reason why you have this color on? Do you know the reason why this Arisha is over your head? So I feel that I need to sit under someone, and preferably you, because we both from Louisiana, and I can contact you. I can get in, and I can always come there to learn.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Rather me going to someone that's in Africa and is 1,000 miles away. I can always have access to you. Now, and I also feel that you're about your business. You know what I mean? You're about what you're talking about, basically. You know how we say it, Louisiana. You're about what you're talking about. I feel comfortable with that. So that's why I'm seeking, more knowledge,
Well, let me tell
hopefully
you,
initiation
if
from
I
it.
can be if I can be honest with you, you're gonna have to read. That's I'm gonna
Oh
push
yeah.
you.
Oh,
I'm gonna push
I
you to
read every
read.
day. I read every day, G.
Yeah, yeah. Even you started out talking about astrology, and I'm grateful for your honesty. I really am, and how you shared your story and your experience, and your truth about sort of where you are, at this time in your process. Because my immediate questions, because I always have questions, would have been, how well do you know astrology? How well ingrained are you to understand the houses, understand how the planets align up? First for yourself, because those are the things that you first get introduced in that book that I offer, Secret Teachings of the Ages. But then there are many other books. I have another practical astrology, I believe it's called. It should be in here somewhere, if not in the Traitor. Didn't borrow it. But it's another old astrology book. I'll share it with you off air, by email, from the 1970s. And it's a play by play workbook of astrology. So it works
Mm-hmm.
you through the charts, it works you through the planets, it works you through the triunes and the transitions and the retrogrades and the tuplets, sextiles and what they mean, and all that sort of thing. So even if you're the
Mm-hmm.
astrologer, I expect you to have that thing that you suggested, some practical working knowledge behind that. It's more than
Mm-hmm.
12 zodiac signs. It's more than 12 planets, really. And then how does that
Mm-hmm.
show up on the chart? Comes from repetition. You see a pattern repeat itself for you. You see a pattern repeat itself around you. You see a pattern repeat itself for others. You read a pattern repeat itself in other practitioners' work. And then in time, you have a working relationship with something. I compare it to playing the piano. I started playing the piano by ear by age 3. I went to school. I learned music, how to read music, technically read and write music. My mother is a retired music teacher, but I prefer playing by ear. But what makes you a professional is your ability to be Alicia Keys. Alicia Keys can play by ear, but Alicia Keys is trained,
Mm-hmm.
professional, experienced, and started out very young. So age is not as much an issue as it is people's willingness to do that kind of hard work.
Mm-hmm.
At any age. We know 9-year-olds, 10-year-olds who are self-employed are running $1 million businesses. We know 9-year-olds, 10-year-olds who do read music, who do play violin, who do play cello, who do play trumpet, who do play saxophone. But we're again talking about gift, gift, but also nurturing the gift and developing that into skill. You might have a gift for, but until you apply that, it doesn't develop into a skill, a real tool that you can then say, I'm prepared to sell or offer to the benefit of others.
Mm-hmm.
Greetings, Marcus.
Yeah.
Go ahead, beloved.
Yeah. You right about that. And what I'm saying is, I'm not saying like that people you can't be a professional by a certain age.
Mm-hmm.
What I'm saying is like the people who just want to look the part. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because I understand that's like 10-year-old Ephah priest. You know what I mean? That knows a lot because they've been raised in the tradition.
Mm-hmm.
But as far as someone coming, in the United States is a little bit different
Yeah.
because people are not raised like that nowadays. It's very few people.
That's right.
Um, um,
That's right.
And it's a little bit different. So that's what I was saying. I'm not
I agree.
like.
I understand.
Mm-hmm.
I understand clearly. If you born in Yoruba land, you born into this. You know how to count by five. You know how to read palm nuts by five. But we are in a unique position here in the Middle Passage, and now because of the internet, the awareness of that is now universal. So you have West Africans coming for you. You have South Americans coming for your pocket. You have Hispanics coming for your pocket, and you have African Americans coming for your pocket. And if we compare it to the church, it would be the same. You have your corner storefront preacher who may or may not even speak English very well, who may or may not even be able to read very well. I'm describing my dad right now, my biological dad, who may not have more than a seventh or an eighth grade education, and they decide they want to open a church. They decide they want to preach, and have given no real study to. So I'm with you. We on the same page. We on the same page. It's about the
I'm going
look.
to email you what you're saying.
I was saying that it's indeed about the look. Even when you look at it, what it is it's religious. Even for people who say they aren't religious, it's religious. Because when you look at religion and how religious people act, when people first get saved or first, get introduced to Islam or first get introduced to that teaching, they're gung ho, they're excited, they doing backflips and they doing cartwheels. So I say it's religious that wanting to give the outward look of being spiritual, of being a witch, of being powerful. It's a religious type behavior.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is. Like when people show up to church and they try to outdress each other and who have the best car on Sunday, who cars wash, who cars not. It's the same perpetual thing that's going on in the ATR community.
Yes. We haven't really done the work. And indeed, if you haven't truly been initiated correctly, you haven't done the work. Because part of that work is about lave tete, cleansing your head, getting your head cleansed of what was already there, of what you already know, what you already think you believe, what you've already been taught, and then making space for the sacred to sort of come in and teach itself. Because God can teach itself, spirit can teach itself, magic can teach itself, but you need those tools. And you need that fertile soil, that fertile ground in which to root that new self, that new identity, that new understanding in. I appreciate you, beloved.
Yeah. The last thing, I'm going to email you and I'm going to show you the books that I do have. And I want, if you could, can you pinpoint which one that will follow your curriculum, like a pre-initiation thing where I can be gaining some knowledge now, and before I seek initiation, or if I'm granted initiation by you, I can be reading the books already and making a schedule for myself to have reading time for those books.
All is a blessing. All is a blessing.
Have a good one.
You too. You as well.
You.
Be safe. That brother's doing the work.
Same to you.
That brother, for those of you who don't know, is doing the work. He's in Beaumont, Texas, cleaning out drains, of which you all are dropping wipes and paper towels and all kind of stuff into because you can't find toilet paper. So my hat's off to that brother for being out there, for being vulnerable, but for being careful and for protecting himself, and all those frontline workers and essential workers that are out there um, doing the work. I'm certainly grateful. I'm certainly grateful to you all for being out there and doing that work. Of course, it's too late to call in live on Blog Talk Radio. Only the people who've already called in, who are already online, can continue to hear us through the Blog Talk Radio platform. Otherwise, that's going into archive, where it'll have that hour and 8 minutes of silence where we were muted before it'll actually play again in the archive. You can, however, type your questions, comments, and requests in all capital letters in the chat room. If you can, Kayla and some others are not able to type in all capitals. So in that regard, you want to use quotation marks before and after your question, and absolutely use correct punctuation. And Kiona will help me to see and respond to your questions and or comments. I'm here for you each and every day at high noon U.S. Central Standard Time with more revolutionary hoodoo, New Orleans voodoo secrets and recipes, with love, with support, with empowerment, with information, with dialogue. And I absolutely appreciate your active participation in the show. I also appreciate your donations and your offerings, your non refundable donations and your offerings. I certainly do appreciate you. This is a legitimate ministry. This is a legitimate LLC. I do pay my taxes. I do my paperwork. I do handle my business, and I certainly appreciate your support for not only the voodoo, but also for the ancestral masquerade, the Black Carnival masking, Team Black Hawk Voodoo, and of course for our bringing eguns to Mayafa, bringing eguns to other ritual ceremonies. So I appreciate you by way of my website at www.houseofthedivineprince.com. And I also appreciate you by way of my PayPal.me/ the Divine Prince. And divine is spelled DivinePrince. Please hit me with your questions, comments, and requests. Otherwise, I'm going to hydrate and find me something to eat and move it forward. Be mindful, be creative, be calm, be still, be kind, be well, be safe, be happy, be patient, be prayerful, be mindful, be conscious, be aware, be love, be proactive, be available, be peace, and stay safe, stay at home, stay safe, stay at home, stay safe, stay at home. Until next time, remembering that all is truly and indeed a blessing if you can just see beyond the veils, for it is all just an illusion and a test and one of the greatest divine mysteries of this life cycle. Until next time, all is a blessing. Ashe. Aboru, aboye. Ashe.